Around 10,000 years ago, after the last ice age ended, a moist climatic era began over North Africa, and much of the region became covered by fertile savanna. Then, around 6,000 to 7,000 years ago, rainfall markedly declined, leaving Egypt as part of a new Sahara desert. In fact, today's orbiting radar satellites enable us to detect beneath Egypt's sands numerous river valleys from that earlier period. The ongoing drought compelled the nomadic population to settle permanently in the narrow strip along the Nile Valley, leading to the development of the advanced civilization of the pharaohs. Even modern Egyptians are reminded of the surrounding deserts, which periodically subject them to sandstorms, and these, when combined with Cairo's extreme smoke pollution, certainly reduce visibility. Eventually, however, the dust disappears and life returns to normal, though remaining somewhat smoky. For much of the 4,500 years since the Sphinx and pyramids were created, the Sphinx remained buried and protected by sand. A huge structure, its dimensions are nevertheless dwarfed by the pyramids, the largest containing over 2.3 million limestone blocks and reaching a height of 146 metres. Most of the pyramid blocks were quarried nearby, around the raised outcrop which became the Sphinx. However, many of the lower course blocks, each weighing up to 6 tonnes, were transported from as far away as southern Egypt. In contrast, if we switch to an early morning on the Nile in southern Egypt, we experience a virtual paradise in the heart of the desert, with fresh air and a scene little changed for thousands of years. Just occasionally, a large modern ship is a reminder that we're in the 21st century. The world's longest river, the Nile has a seemingly unlimited flow of water which originates far to the south as tropical rain over the Ethiopian highlands. For thousands of years, a fairly reliable annual flood replenished the rich black volcanic soil over low-lying land beside the river, allowing the agricultural pursuits of the Egyptians to flourish. Intermittently, where the banks are a little steeper, the desert virtually extends to the water's edge, with typical scenes characteristically including a camel or two. In some parts of the Nile are substantial islands where the unique culture dates back thousands of years. Further south, right beside the Nile, are gigantic twin temples, modestly featuring 4 colossal statues of builder Ramses the Great and his great royal wife, Nefertari. Completed well over 3,000 years ago, in territory taken over from the Nubians centuries earlier, the top section of one of the statues was felled by an earthquake not long after completion. Inside, hollowed out from the sandstone ravine wall, we find massive sculpted pillars and walls, left in place to support the roof and mountain above. The images depict Ramses victorious in battle and performing sacred rituals. Twice a year, at the spring and autumn equinoxes, the sun's rays illuminate these deity statues in the innermost chamber. The nearest city in the south is bustling Aswan. Here, the population's Nubian racial origins are much more evident than the Arabic dominance of northern Egypt. Markets are hugely popular with locals and tourists alike, and just about anything can be purchased. Various craft works are carried out, including the traditional fashioning of fine white alabaster. Nearby is a pink granite quarry containing this unfinished 1,100-ton obelisk, which was abandoned 3,500 years ago, no doubt regretfully, when it developed large cracks. Moving well northwards now to central Egypt, we find the vast limestone mountain ranges where the Valley of the Kings is located. On the eastern bank of the Nile is Luxor, a thriving city, previously known as Thebes, which became Egypt's ancient capital over 4,000 years ago, when it grew to a population of over 1 million, more than double that of today. Luxor features 2 major temples. Karnak, the largest religious complex on Earth, occupies a site 1.5 kilometres long, and at one time had up to 80,000 priests and employees. This pillar, over 26 metres high, was one of several supporting the roof of what must have been an awe-inspiring structure. The incomplete end pillar of this group shows us how these incredibly heavy supports were created by initially stacking roughly cut stone sections before later being shaped and finished off. Similarly, this 2,300-year-old unfinished gateway pylon with a crumbling mud brick ramp beside it indicates how the heavy stone blocks were dragged up the ramp to the desired height. We tend to imagine that all these ancient buildings were stone-coloured as we now generally find them. In fact, by examining the sections which have been protected from sun and rain, we can obtain an impression of just how colourful they must have been originally. linked to Karnak Temple by a 3-kilometre long avenue of sphinxes, is the second of Luxor's major temples. Floodlit, Luxor Temple lets us imagine just how spectacular a temple lit by torch flame would have been at night. Behind the first range of limestone mountains just across the Nile from Luxor is located the 3,500-year-old temple built by one of Egypt's few female pharaohs, Hatshepsut. The colourful inscriptions on some internal walls have been exceptionally well preserved. Nearby are the remains of the purpose-built village where the skilled artisans who worked on the royal tombs lived with their families. In the adjacent Valley of the Kings itself, 62 tombs have been discovered. All have elaborately decorated entrance passages, and most have a large number of rooms. One actually has over 130 rooms and passages, totalling 450 metres in length. The least disturbed royal tomb is that of Tutankhamun. Although he was a relatively minor pharaoh, having died at the age of 19 after reigning for only 9 or 10 years, Tutankhamun's mummified body was found wearing this now famous priceless gold mask with its various inlaid precious materials and complex inscriptions. He was placed in this upper solid gold 110 kilogram coffin, which in turn was inside a larger granite sarcophagus weighing many tons. These are some of the incredible antiquities discovered in a neighbouring room, all perfectly preserved for 3,300 years, thanks ultimately to the fact that the tomb entrance had been obscured by the debris from a later tomb construction. Throughout Egypt, countless other magnificent artefacts and decorated structures have been found over the centuries. Some deliberately desecrated by later pharaohs or religious groups, such as this example. But many are remarkably well preserved by the dry atmosphere or by being buried for millennia under the sands of the Sahara.
زيك انا كان مكتوب ماما اذا مصوره ماما عاد